If I told you 5 small tweaks could fix 95% of the retirement problems that derail most people, would you want to know what they are? I'm a certified financial planner, and for over a decade, I've helped people retire with confidence. And today, I'm going to walk you through those 5 tweaks plus a bonus one that you can start thinking about right now to make your plan stronger, safer, and built to last. So let's start with the foundation, spending less than you earn. Yes, I know this sounds obvious, but in retirement, it's not always clear what that even means. I can't tell you how many times I've heard someone say, we know what we spend, we just put everything on the credit card, and then we just pay it off every single month. But here's the problem, that's not your spending, that's just what gets charged. It doesn't account for the full pictures, things like taxes, savings, giving, insurance, or debt payments. And in retirement, those categories change, sometimes significantly. If you think you're spending $10,000 a month and you're actually spending $14,000, that gap can wreck your retirement projections. So here's how we fix it. Reverse engineer your true lifestyle costs using a model we call Live, Give, Owe, Grow. And I'm even going to give you a copy of this spreadsheet for free in the description below. So what you do is you start with your total gross income, then subtract taxes, savings, insurance, and debt payments, and charitable giving. And so what's left? Well, that's actually what you're living on. And that number, not your credit card bill, is what we need to base your retirement plan on. Because if you don't know your lifestyle cost, you can't know if you're spending less than you earn. Now, after spending less than you earn, the next most important tweak is protecting your downside, specifically from bad market timing. Because even with a solid plan, the sequence of returns can break your retirement before it even gets started. So here's the danger. If you retire and the market drops in your first few years, you're not just losing money. You're selling shares at a loss to cover spending, and those losses compound fast. It's called sequence of return risk, and most retirees don't even know it exists until it's too late. I want you to think about it like reverse dollar cost averaging. But there are 2 simple ways to fix this. So option 1, you build a war chest. You set aside anywhere from 3 to 7 years of spending you plan from your portfolio and put all that money in a conservative asset so that when the market drops, you don't have to sell at a loss. And in the current interest rate environment here at 1 degree, we like to put 1 year of spending in a money market fund to get some nice interest, and then the rest in high quality short duration bonds. So let me show you quickly how this works. Let's take the great financial crisis as an example. So in 2008, while stocks were down bad, you could use your bonds to create income without touching your stocks and give them time to recover. Now, if you're wondering why we have a year of spending in money market when bonds seem to do well when stocks are falling, well, that's because there are instances where both stocks and bonds fall. What if 2022 was the first year of your retirement? Cash was crucial at this time period. This is one of the easiest things you can do to help reduce your sequence of return risk. Now, option 2, which you can use in conjunction with option 1, is to use a guardrails-based withdrawal strategy like we do for our clients. And this adjusts your withdrawals based on the risk in your plan and how your portfolio is performing. So if markets are up and risk in your plan decreases, you can take more. And if risk in your plan increases or your portfolio is down, then you slightly tighten up the belt to avoid long-term damage. I want you to think about those guardrails like having bumpers in a bowling lane, right? You're still headed toward the pins, but you're protected from going into the gutter either direction. Now, a lot of retirees assume asset allocation is just about how aggressive or conservative your investments are, but the real opportunity, the thing most people miss, is optimizing your allocation for both tax efficiency and purpose. So here's the problem. If your aggressive growth funds are in your taxable account and your tax-free Roth IRA is filled with bonds, you're probably paying more in taxes than you need to and missing out on potential growth where it matters most. But what's worse is if your portfolio isn't aligned with your spending goals, your withdrawals could be pulling from the wrong buckets at the wrong time. It's kind of like having all the right ingredients to make a great meal, but you're storing the meat on the counter and then you put the wine in the freezer, right? You had everything you needed, you just didn't put it in the right place. And so the fix is smarter alignment. What you want to do is match your investments with both the account type and the intended use. So use taxable accounts for tax efficient funds like index ETFs or municipal bond funds, depending on your bracket. And then you also want to reserve your IRA or Roth IRA for high growth, tax inefficient investments and strategies. And most importantly, align your allocation to your actual goals. In other words, income needs now, growth needs for later, and then legacy or charitable intent for the long term. So here's an example of what that can look like that we recently set up for a new family working with our firm. Okay, so as we can see here, this is an example of Karen and Joe Brown, of course, fictitious names, but real client portfolio values. And so we can see they have a trust, some IRAs, a Roth IRA. So think about these different accounts and their tax type. Now, here's the deal. They have a portfolio of about $4.6 million. If you don't have the size of a portfolio, that's okay. The principles still apply. So don't get fixated on the dollar amount, because again, this is about the principles. So about $4.6 million in their portfolio, $3 million of that is in the trust. And that's the primary income account that we'll be first taking income from when they retire. So yes, we'll be looking at things like Roth conversions, but the reality is that we'll still be creating income from the trust, paying for taxes from that Roth conversion from their primary income account. So we have the primary income account, and then the rest is just tax deferred and tax-free money. Now here's the critical piece. I haven't done their financial plan in this video for you, but the reality is that the amount that we needed to pull from their portfolio in the next 5 years, the first years of retirement, is about $564,000. So $564,000 is a percentage of the portfolio, is about 12%. But we're not just pulling from the entire portfolio. We're first pulling from that primary income account first, which is the trust. And that dollar amount as a percentage of the primary income account is 18%. So why am I doing all this math? Why are we taking the time to do this? Because it's critical on your asset allocation and looking at your accounts. Which accounts are you going to pull from first, and making sure those accounts are aligned? So if we go down, we can see that our primary account, the trust, we need to make sure that we have roughly 18% of that account in those more conservative investments to create their income, right? Reduce the sequence of return risk that we previously talked about. And so we just rounded up the value to 20%. So this is how their trust should look. And then when we go down to things like their IRA and their Roth IRA, we can be more aggressive and more growth oriented because we're not going to touch those first. And then B, we can use more tax inefficient strategies in these accounts because we don't have to worry about taxes. The specific tactical strategy that we run internally here at 1 Degree Advisors is not entirely tax efficient, so we primarily use that in retirement accounts like an IRA or a Roth, okay? So the bottom line is when you do it this way, then you know your game plan of how am I allocating, you're paying attention to taxes and making sure that the income is set up for you. Because the bottom line is you've worked hard for what you've built, and this tweak makes sure that more of it stays with you and your family instead of going out to taxes or poor timing. But if your beneficiary designations are out of date or missing altogether, your plan could fall apart when it matters most. And here's what most people don't realize. Your will does not control who gets your IRA or your 401k. The beneficiary form does. And if that form hasn't been updated, or worse, it's blank, your money could go through probate. That can mean delays, legal fees, unnecessary taxes, and in some cases, assets going to the wrong person entirely. Unfortunately, I've seen it happen more than once. And when it does, it's messy and expensive. So here's the tweak. Review every single account: IRA, Roth, 401k, annuities, life insurance, brokerage accounts. Make sure the primary and contingent beneficiaries are current, intentional, and coordinated with your estate plan. And here's a little bonus tip. I don't want you to think about this just in terms of percentages. Think in terms of dollars. You may have a $2 million 401k with 50% going to your son and 50% to your daughter, and that might sound reasonable. But when I say that each would stand to inherit $1 million, it sounds a lot different now, doesn't it? It makes you think because their dollars are real now, and it can help you make better decisions. This alone can save your family months of legal hassle and tens of thousands in avoidable costs. It's 30 minutes of work that can protect 30 years of effort. Now, most retirement plans focus on the fun stuff: travel, hobbies, family time. But if you're not planning for the serious stuff, the fun can get cut short fast. Because here's the hard truth. All it takes is one health event: a stroke, cancer, long-term care, and your entire financial plan can get thrown out the window. Medical costs can drain your savings, strain your family, and force you to make decisions out of desperation instead of intention. And the worst part about all this is most people don't plan for it, frankly, just because it's uncomfortable to talk about. And so to see what I mean, let's look at what long-term care can actually cost. So if we look at long-term care costs at our office, so our office is in San Diego, 92108 is the is the zip code here. And I'll flip over to annual just to make this really easy. So what you'll see is that the annual median cost of long-term care in San Diego, like if you needed to go into a nursing home, is about $131,000 a year. If you needed to go into a private room, that cost can be up to $192,000 a year. Now, maybe you're thinking, you know what, I'm not going to go into a facility. I'm just going to have like someone come into the house. That is still around $90,000 a year. And the crazy thing is that the projected costs only get worse. So whatever the cost is today, expect them to keep going up. So as you can see, it's expensive and uncomfortable to imagine, but avoiding the conversation doesn't protect you. Planning does. And here's what that looks like. Understand your medical coverage, what's included, what's not, and when you need to act. And then evaluate whether you need long-term care coverage. And maybe you explore creative ways to fund it if traditional insurance isn't a fit. And then from there, you can build healthcare costs into your withdrawal strategy so that when life throws you a curveball, your plan bends, but it doesn't break. And this tweak isn't about living in fear, it's about giving yourself and your family peace of mind, knowing that even if something unexpected happens, you're ready. All right, now we're on to the bonus. For most people, their tax return is just a chore. You file it, maybe you glance at the refund or the balance due, but then you forget about it until next year. But what if I told you your tax return is a gold mine of retirement planning opportunities and 99% of people miss them? And that's because every year I see people unknowingly overpaying taxes, they lose deductions, or they trigger Medicare surcharges, all because no one ever taught them how to read their tax return through a planning lens. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're giving to charity. You're writing checks out of your checkbook and you're taking the standard deduction. And you're feeling like you're doing the right thing. But if you're over age 70 and a half and giving from your IRA using a QCD, you could reduce your taxable income and lower your IRMA bracket. Same gift, same generosity, but completely different tax results. Or maybe last year you got hit with an unexpected IRMA surcharge on your Medicare premiums because your income crossed a threshold by a few $100. What if you'd known ahead of time and adjusted your income? You could have avoided that entirely. And that's because your tax return isn't just a record of what happened, it's a blueprint for what you can do next. And that's why we review our clients' tax returns every year for these exact opportunities. Things like Roth conversion windows, bracket management, charitable planning, and capital gain harvesting. You see, you already have the information, you just need to look at it differently. And you don't need to get everything right in retirement. You just need to get the big things right. And once you make some tweaks to get the big things right, you'll stop feeling like one bad year or one missed detail could blow up your plan, and you'll finally feel like your retirement is built to last. So now you've got the big pieces dialed in, but what if I told you we helped a real client create $100,000 of retirement income and pay $0 in federal tax? And this is one of the most powerful examples of tax smart planning we've ever done, and it's helped thousands of people rethink their retirement income. There's no gimmicks, no Roth IRAs required, and no risky moves. In this next video, I'll walk you through exactly how we did it step by step so you can see how powerful the right retirement income plan really is. Click here and I'll show you how we made it happen.